The scene then shifts to Saw Corporation, where we see a regal-looking lady sitting in her chair. I can tell she's definitely Yeona's sister because she looks just as gorgeous with her flowing black hair. Suddenly, an assistant bursts into the room. The woman looks a bit annoyed at this sudden intrusion and wants to know why he didn't bother to ask for permission before barging in. The assistant quickly reports that Yeona has been kidnapped. The news surprises the lady, but surprisingly, she doesn't seem too troubled by it. In fact, she starts to smile faintly and seems to think that the rumors must be true after all. Not entirely sure what she's referring to, but let's roll with it. She then asks if their grandfather is still planning to go after the company. The assistant states that he is not sure, so she leans back, hoping that if he continues to pursue them without backing down, Yeona will eventually die. It's definitely something she's looking forward to. The scene transitions back to the pub, where we pick up the story with our main character meeting with Cha, and Seokju is also tagging along with him. Seokju already seems to know about Cha as he recognizes him from their database, and is curious about how our boy knows this gangster. Cha starts by asking what our boy wants. In response, Jin simply says he needs some intel. Cha lights up another cigarette and scoffs, asking why he would bother to help him. Our boy cuts to the chase, revealing that the granddaughter of Saw Corporation has been kidnapped. Well, that is something Cha definitely was not expecting to hear. However, he quickly brushes it off, saying it's not their problem and that they don't deal with such issues because it would be incredibly risky to mess with Saw Corporation. Our boy asks if Cha has any leads to offer, but the mafia boss makes it clear that there's no reason for him to share anything, especially since he's already in a difficult situation thanks to our boy. That's when our boy reveals that his younger sister was also taken along with Saw's granddaughter. Cha finally realizes he's in a tough spot now, as messing with our boy's sister is like messing with John Wick's dog. Both are equally dangerous. So he then starts explaining, and mentions that some people speaking broken Korean were asking around for untraceable warehouses, as well as for burners, cars, and a few extra hands. The offer was tempting, but he turned them down because dealing with this kind of trouble isn't something you can easily wash off. He adds that he's heard another crew took the job, and all he knows is they're working out of Incheon. That's all the info he's got. It wouldn't be surprising if Seokju had already figured out who's behind this mess. Meanwhile, our boy starts to walk away after giving a final thanks. But then, the mafia boss tosses his phone to our boy and tells him to save his number. Jin cluelessly looks at him, puzzled about why he'd need his number. The mafia boss gets a bit agitated and clarifies that he'll need it to contact him once he digs into the warehouse for more info. With that, our boy starts entering his digits. He also asks if the bike outside the door belongs to him. Cha knows exactly what our boy is planning to do with it, so he feels hesitant to respond. But eventually, my guy takes the heavy bike, and before leaving, he tells Seokju figure his own way out to get there, because he's taking the bike. Seokju questions whether he is going to trust this shady half-baked info, and going to chase those kidnappers based on that. Our boy explains that he doesn't have time to waste, because Yeona will probably be safe until the kidnappers get what they want, but there's no telling what they might do with Daeon. Seokju gets the logic behind Jin's reasoning and stays quiet, and he can tell that he is a quick and sharp thinker. Seokju then tells him that he's already passed the info to his security team and will follow him in his car. Jin just gives a cold response, saying Seokju can do whatever he wants. With that, he puts on his helmet, revs up the gas pedal, and speeds off through the streets. The scene then switches back to the girls, where we see Daeon waking up with a headache and, as she becomes aware of her surroundings, Yeona quickly apologizes, saying it's probably her fault that Daeon got dragged into this. Daeon's mind starts to recall the recent event, and she is shocked to remember that they have been kidnapped, and Yeona sadly confirms it, adding that she didn't expect this to happen so soon after returning to Korea. Just then, the kidnappers arrive, and Yeona coldly asks them why they had been abducted. One of the kidnappers snaps at her to shut up and stay quiet, and it'll be over soon enough. Of course, it does not take her long to realize that these filthy people must be planning to use her as leverage against her grandfather. One of the lackeys then asks the boss what they should do with Daeon, who was kidnapped simply because she was with Yeona. Unsurprisingly, the boss decides she is useless to them and orders his lackeys to get rid of her. But Yeona immediately speaks up, insisting she won't let them harm Daeon. The boss asks what she can possibly do, and Yeona threatens that she'll bite her tongue and bleed to death, making it impossible for them to use her as a bargaining chip. The mafia boss finds it hilarious that she's willing to risk her life for someone she barely knows. He further taunts her, urging her to go ahead and try biting her tongue. Well, the mafia boss should have been more careful with his words because Yeona doesn't hesitate and bites her tongue, leaving blood pouring from her mouth. The boss yells in surprise, while the other lackey watches in silence, clearly startled to see her steel-like guts. The boss quickly stands up and tells her that her guts have bought her some time. The lackeys ask what the next order is. The boss tells them to get rid of Daeon later and instructs them to stuff her mouth shut so she can't make any noise. The scene then flashes back to our boy and Seokju. It looks like they've arrived at the location Mr. Cha mentioned. Seokju points out that the location seems legit because SW security tracked the minivan footage to this area. As our boy starts to move forward, Seokju tells him to stop and wait for backup, since he sent their coordinates to SW security and they should arrive soon. But our boy reminds him that Daeon doesn't have much time left, so he gotta make it quick. There's no room for argument, so they proceed forward and spot a bunch of goons patrolling the area. Suddenly, our boy leaps over one of the goons, grabs him by the throat, and starts choking him out. The lackey eventually loses consciousness, and our boy quietly drags him into the shadows, adding him to a pile of other goons he's already taken down. Seokju is also helping out, and he's blown away by Jin's ability to take down opponents silently. He's so impressed that he asks Jin who the heck he is. Jin just casually replies that he's an average student at the same school.